Sunday, do you want to start, or would you like me to? It's up to you.
We'll just go with the game plan, Zaga. I'll go ahead and get started. I'll kick it off to you, Zaga, and then we'll kick it off to Gladios, okay?
That sounds good.
All right, sounds good. So, a minute past the hour. So, hello, everyone. Welcome. This is the Tigray Communities Forum, North America. This is the Languages of Tigray, Origin and Evolution of Tigrigna. Now, this is a series. This is part two. I'm seeing a lot of familiar faces on here from our first original call, The History of Tigray. This has been put on by the Identity Committee. That's part of the forum. We've got some wonderful people working hard on here. There's Dr. Tsaga, there's Professor Zere, there's Dr. Galadios, and then there is Futsum, and of course our fearless leader, Atomulu Geita, just to name a few. This committee has came about basically because there is a huge need, there's a huge demand to educate our own when it comes to our history, our culture, our identity, our heritage, just to name a few things. And I got involved. Of course, I'm aware of the forum. I'm part of the Tagadu Professionals Network. I work with the communications team, and we've got some wonderful young professionals on this team. And I'm able to stay connected to our community here in North America to build our networks and honestly to encourage one another to about the importance of community. And so on this call tonight, let me just lay it out for you guys. After we get through the introductions, we'll have about 45 minutes of history from Dr. Galadios. And then after that, we'll have 45 minutes for Q&A. It's going to be really amazing. So that is the main introduction that I'll give for now. I'm going to kick it over to my sister, Dr. Tsaga, who is a wonderful human being. She inspires me so much every day with the knowledge and wealth and wisdom that she carries. So please, Doctor, go ahead.
Sanai. Okay. Sanai is my partner in crime. Good to meet you all. Thank you all for being here. We're so thrilled to be kicking off. Sorry, ignore the baby in the background. We're to be kicking off the second session in a 9-part series. As Sanai said, our goal here is to equip you all and ourselves with a beginning, an introduction to the vast history that exists in our little corner of the world and what our ancestors did to contribute to that history. We hope that this inspires you all to start to investigate yourselves, write books in the future. You guys are the scholars of tomorrow. So we're just trying to get you, light the fire a little bit, get excited. We're here tonight inviting Dr. Glaudios Araya, who'd be, he's our main presenter. He's a professor of African Studies, African and International Studies at the City University of New York, CUNY. He's published a number of books in English, in Tigrigna, and in Amharic, and is very passionate about the field. We're very happy to have such an esteemed scholar join us. Thank you, Dr. Glaudios, for contributing to our knowledge base. As usual, we encourage everyone to ask questions. We're really excited. Through your questions, we learn more together. So Dr. Glaudios, I'm gonna kick it off to you. One more thing, a plug for the Tagaru Professionals Network. We're a branch or we're nested within the Tigray Communities North America, and we really want people to get involved. We need all of us to be involved in order to build a broader network, like Sanai said. And just a shout out to our Ashenda event that's coming up very soon, our Ashenda fundraiser. I'm sure one of our teammates will put a plug in the chat box for you all. If you've got questions, just some housekeeping rules. Everyone, questions are welcome, but be polite. And feel free to put your questions in the chat box. And I believe Hayelum will be collecting them so that they can be answered at the end. Okay, so thank you all so much, Dr. Glaudios. I'm going to kick it off to you.
Thank you.
Okay. Here we are. Is that visible to everyone?
Yeah, it's like that looks good.
Okay.
Yeah, that's good.
Very good. Thank you, Dr. Jagat and Sanai, for that introduction. Tonight, I'm going to present my Tigrigna language and literature. And in the interest of time, I'm just going to read on the screen what I wrote for this presentation. So this is going to really cover a lot of interesting issues pertaining to Tigrigna language. Okay, it's going to be also introduction to some people who don't really understand Tigrigna at all. Some people who understand Tigrigna, but not quite in terms of understanding the very essence of the language itself. And it's also an appeal to the linguists back home to do something about Tigrigna literature and language as a whole. So, in this presentation, I will cover the historical evolution of Tigrigna language, both spoken and written, discuss the making of language in general in the context of biolinguistics and sociolinguistics, so that the target audience, meaning you, that is the young diaspora Tagaru, their parents, the learned Tagaru and linguists at home, and in the diaspora, grasp the essence of language as a whole, and more specifically, the Tigrigna, also spelled as Tigrigna, language. But the focus of this presentation is going to be on the nature of and characteristics of Tigrigna language that in turn systematically include phonology, which I'm going to explain all of them, or phoneme, and germination, articulation of a consonant represented by a double letter, allophones, any of the speech sounds that represent a single phoneme, syllab, the consonant-vowel relationship in Tigrigna, and grammar, innovations, and finally Tigrigna writing system and or literature. Most importantly, in this presentation, I will employ the methodologies of isogloss and dialect geography, which I'm going to define in a moment. These are two important words in order to critically examine and analyze Tigrigna as a vernacular and standard language. So the first subtitle is going to be language or articulate speech in general. Language has biological and social roots. And to be sure, we humans are born with biochemical speech nerves in our brains. In other words, babies are born with hardwired speech nerves. And when the time arrives, on average, beginning 18 months of age, babies open up and utter words. Their first ever spoken words. They herald what we call articulate speech. After a while, however, toddlers become members of a given society. Their language is determined by the language of the larger society. And this is what we call sociolinguistics. Not only do young members of society begin to speak a certain language, but they also speak it with accent, imitating the conventions of the community or society to which they belong. So while biolinguistics makes all humans the same via what is known universal grammar, sociolinguistics makes them different and or diverse. In the latter context, thus, we have now 6,500 languages in the world. 2,000 of these languages are found in Africa. And out of these African languages, 80 are found in Ethiopia. And Tigrigna is one of them. Some linguists, in fact, argue that there are 3,000 languages in Africa, but there is no conclusive evidence on this figure because in some African language studies, some dialects are confused with language. But there is a general consensus among linguists on the definition of language. That is a standardized code used in spoken and written form. whereas dialects are only spoken codes without standard written system. However, other linguists in an effort to make distinction between language and dialect, they still want to define dialect as a different variety of the same language that has evolved historically, but in a different geographical area. A good example of this is the Portuguese that is spoken in Brazil. Scroll down. Dr. Tsaga. Tigrigna belongs to the Semitic family of language, and in turn belongs to the Afro-Asiatic groups of language in Africa that are distributed mostly in the Horn of Africa and Northern Africa, as shown in the map below. If you can see this map now, actually this map, okay, thank you. In this map, you see the, although there are 2,000 or more languages in the continent of Africa, they are subdivided into what we call linguistic groups. So the northern part, as you can see, the one that looks golden or yellow-green, that is the Afro-Asiatic one. So we are right there, actually. Tigrigna belongs to that group. Amharic belongs to that group. Other languages belong to that group. Or more specifically, like I said earlier, Tigrigna is also part of the Semitic languages. So scroll down. In this part of my presentation, I first give credit and extend gratitude to the early pioneers of linguistics like Edward Sapir and Benjamin Lee Whorf. In fact, the system, the paradigm in linguistics is called the Sapir-Whorf methodology or paradigm. And scholars like Hatyangan and Hudson, who made extensive studies on the evolution and making of language. In very simple terms, rather, language is a tool for understanding the world and for communication. But as Hatyangan put it, it should be known that human language is a product of our evolution, not only the genetic and social evolution of millions of years, but also the more remarkable cultural evolution of recent years. If anything about language is evident, it is that it perpetuates itself in whatever form it exists. Even as we use it, every individual must learn the language that others speak if he or she is to communicate in that language. This means that he or she must learn language whose conventions are already established as given. Therefore, since we depend upon these conventions in order to communicate, they cannot be changed by any individual arbitrarily, except to the extent that one can indicate one's meaning, usually with the help of the conventions available. In regards to change and reform of the Ge'ez alphabet suggested by some people, I will further discuss and elaborate it when I discuss Tigrigna Ge'ez alphabets. In other words, language, though biologically endowed to humans, our respective language, in the final analysis, are social products and operate in the context of the larger society and its conventions, and individuals have no power to change them. Therefore, the meaning of words, grammar, and other structural features of language must be understood historically or in terms of the evolution of language. In the history or evolution of language, the active and progressive element is, as always has been, intellectual endeavor. Language presupposes social conventions. A child from one language community can learn to speak the language of another community with proper exposure. Moreover, learning a new language involves at least learning how others communicate. That is to say, learning the conventions of that community. I am saying this on purpose because our young Tagaru in the diaspora, when they travel to Tigray, as a matter of course, will begin to communicate with indigenous Tigray people. And the first thing they should consider is the conventions of the Tigrayan communities. Okay? Now I go to the second subtitle, the genesis of Tigrigna language. What is the origination, inception, conception, or birth of the Tigrigna language? A significant number of scholars thought that Tigrigna was born in the 13th century Common Era. But this is an egregious mistake in historiography because Tigrigna actually evolved out of the womb of Giz, the parent language, in Aksum between the 5th and 6th centuries Common Era, at the height of the Aksumite kingdom. In fact, I like to argue that Tigrigna may have even started 2 centuries before the reign of Ezana in 344 BC Common Era, because some Tigrigna names of some kings of Aksum, like Asfaha and Tsigab, had begun to appear on the chronology of monarchs. Asfaha reigned around 233 Common Era, and Tsigab assumed state power in 239 Common Era. Whence do this Tigrigna name come from, unless there were some Tigrigna speakers 111 years before Ezana reigned in Aksum? When Ezana was converted to Christianity, he too was given the name of Abraha, a Tigrigna name. At least we can safely assume that Tigrigna had started in earnest during this time as a spoken language. But its literature or written culture would not begin until the last quarter of the 13th century. That is, until Giz, as a vernacular language, gave way to Tigrigna and Amharic and began to confine itself to the Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo Church. This includes, by the way, the Eritrean Tewahedo Church as well, a phenomenon that is still in existence and a similar experience to that of Latin. By the 13th century Common Era, Tigrigna adopted the Giz alphabets and evolved its own writing system. And as we shall see later, Tigrigna, unlike Amharic, but very much like Tigray, this Tigray is spoken in Eritrea only, has preserved many of Giz phonology, and more specifically of the glottal sounds attributed to some of the alphabets. Tigrigna language in the context of isogloss and dialect geography. This is what I told you earlier. I'm going to define for you now what isogloss means and what dialect geography means. In my Tigrigna book, that's the title of the book. And actually, if you can see it, it's right here. This is the book that I want all of you to have it in the near future. We'll try our best to distribute that book within the Tigrayan communities in North America. I have employed isogloss and dialect geography in order to capture not only the general characteristics of Tigrigna, but also in order to offer an explanatory note on the slight variation of expressions or usage of words in certain localities where Tigrigna is spoken. In mainland Tigray and the three Tigrigna-speaking districts in Eritrea. Etymologically speaking, isogloss in the classical Greek language literally means similar tongue. And I have interpreted as Hade Lusan in Tigrigna in my book mentioned above. And this means within the Tigrigna-speaking greater area, a certain line or geographic boundary can be established based on the way the inhabitants pronounce the same Tigrigna word or vowel differently. Example of isogloss is abound in the Tigray larger zone, but suffice to mention only some that serve our purpose for now. Here we go. These are samples now. If, for instance, we begin our journey from Hamasen in Eritrea, and we are heading toward Wajrat and beyond in southern Tigray, we will encounter different pronunciations of the same word. So I have put them under district and word and pronunciation, as you can see. In Hamasen, for instance, now, the word now is Heji. In Sarai, the word now is Hiye. In Adwa and the surrounding area, the word now is Hizi or Hezi. In most Tigrinya areas, raven or crow is quach, quach, quach. This is glottal now. This is pharyngeal, as a matter of fact. That's the challenge for non-Tigrinya speakers. In the Aksum area, raven and crow, Aksum greater area, I mean, Kwaura, they call it Kwaura. Most Tigrinya areas, pigeon is Rigibit. In the Aksum area, pigeon is Rigibi. The T is gone now. Most Tigrinya areas, tomorrow is Sabah. In the Inderta, tomorrow is Naga. Most Tigrinya areas, ox sharing or meat sharing is Guzi. In Western Tigray, ox sharing is Kuskus. In the Adwa area, ox sharing is Nayahwat, of brothers. Some areas of Tigray, ox sharing is Karamat Siga. In some areas of Tigray, another one is Kurkus. So for just one word, you're going to have different pronunciation, different words. This is what we call isogloss. The above word pronunciations are only examples of isogloss in some areas. But interestingly, the two words of Kwaura and Naga are very close to the Amharic words of Kura and Nega, respectively, and with same meanings in both words to mean raven and tomorrow. And this is not surprising because Amharic also evolved out of Ge'ez, and in many ways it's an offshoot of Tigrinya. On top of this, sometimes we might encounter the same pronunciation of Hiji, tomorrow, in Hamasin, in the Shire and Wolkite areas of Tigray. This could be due to people migrating from their original homes to another area of isogloss. And this phenomenon is explained by what we call diffusion theory, the borrowing of language and cultures. If we go by dialect geography, now dialect geography is now to encompass the entire Tigrinya-speaking people in Tigray and in Eritrea as well. However, for all Tigrinya speakers, Tigrinya becomes a vernacular standard language, and hence commonly used words are the same in all Tigrinya territory. Here, the word dialect is not used in the sense of a sub-language, but as a language area, language geography. For instance, in general, for example, sun is Sahai. Wherever you go, it's Sahai. Water is Mai. And then you go down. West is Mi'rab, period, wherever you go. Light is Burhan. Darkness is Salmat. Ship is Begge. Man is Sab'ai. Woman is Sabaiti. In all Tigrinya areas. That's what makes it one language. The map below is the general area of the Tigrinya-speaking people. The map, you can see the map right here now. All regions of Tigray, southern Eritrea adjacent to Tigray, northern Afar region, and some parts of the Amhara regional state. As you can see on this map, for instance, if you can see on the eastern side, the brown district, and on the right-hand side of the brown district, you see Afar. They speak Tigrinya. If you go north of the brown and the green and the blue, you see Eritrea. These are the Sarai, Kalogza, and the Hamasien Tigrinya-speaking people in Eritrea. They are adjacent, they are one people in terms of language. And then if you go to Wolkite, the pink area, south of the Wolkite, adjacent to that, although they are Amharic speakers, they speak Tigrinya as well. So Tigrinya is spoken in Gondar as well. I have been there myself. I've seen the people speaking Tigrinya. They are bilingual. So you go further down now. After this map, we're going to discuss more. Okay? Go ahead. Okay. In order to further elaborate the significance of dialect geography and standard Tigrinya literature, however, it's absolutely necessary to employ a sociolinguistics approach, simply defined as the study of language in relation to society. You cannot study language outside society. You got to define it in terms of society, the larger society. In here, I have actually borrowed from one linguist by the name Hudson, and he's talking about standard language. In order to have a standard language, which is universal, by the way, you have to have these are the 7 criteria, actually. Number 1 is selection. A particular variety must have been selected as the one to be developed in a standard language. A variety is a distinct form of language, a linguistic expression. A variety helps us understand the overlapping categories of a language, including dialects, register, jargon, idioms, etc., etc. That's what variety means. The second thing that should be done in order to standardize a language is codification. Some agencies, such as an academy, must have written dictionaries and grammar books. I personally have done something in this regard, but it's not enough. Recently, I've heard that Tigrigna dictionary was published by Maghada University, which is a good thing. Okay, that's what codification means. Unless we do that, we're going to have a problem in terms of promoting the language itself. Number 3, elaboration of function. Functions associated with the central government and with writing, for example, in parliament and law courts, in bureaucratic, educational, and scientific documents of all kinds, and of course, in various forms of literature. There has to be uniformity. People speaking in the parliament, in the government, in the schools, in the marketplace, it has to be uniform. That's the purpose of language, actually, really. Number 4, acceptance. The variety has to be accepted by the relevant population. Unless they accept it, there is no way you can communicate with the people. So, number 5, scroll down. Number 5, or no, not 5, actually, standard language serves as a strong unifying force for the state, as a symbol of independence of other states, and as a marker of its difference from other states. This actually can boil down to what we call identity. Identity. If you speak Tigrigna, you're Tigray, or you are Tigrigna speaking from Eritrea, okay? Period. That's what it means. The above 4 criteria for the development of standard language and literature, however, cannot be implemented fully and meaningfully unless peace and stability as preconditions are in hand or in reserve, a phenomenon that is clearly absent in Ethiopia now. This worries me a lot. And relative peace we have in Tigray, in the midst of chaotic Horn of Africa region, could only be a quiet zone of hopeful but helpless and futile endeavors. This worries me a lot as well. For some time to come, thus, the intellectual endeavor I mentioned above could be lost, and progress in the development of language and literature could be hindered. Now I go to what I call nature and characteristics of Tigrigna language and literature. I have already mentioned what linguistic elements characterize the Tigrigna language at the introduction of this presentation, and I will now elaborate those component parts in right order. Following many sources, including Wikipedia and my own research and studies of the Tigrigna language, I will now discuss the important features of what makes Tigrigna distinct from other languages. The first one is phonology. Phonology has to do with the phoneme. I told you early on, phonology is simply about phones, sounds, and we call it phonetic too. Giz is a language as a writing system is phonetic and was designed to capture virtually any sound that is perceptible by humans. English cannot do that. And Tigrigna has a built-in mechanism and a great potential of distinguishing and sounding different words in different contexts. Tigrigna has a set of phonemes typical of a Semitic language. It has a set of ejective consonants. These are voiceless consonants that are pronounced with a glottal, aggressive outward flowing. It comes out from your throat, actually. And pharyngeal consonants as well. Amharic has lost this endowment, but Tigray, like Tigrigna, has also maintained the pharyngeal consonants. Because of its unique endowment and also preservation of the Ge'ez consonants, Tigrigna became very efficient in the pronunciation of words and letters of the alphabets as shown below. But I will put them in Tigrigna only this time, I'm sorry, in order to preserve their authenticity, although I will explain it in English. So the first one you can see on your left-hand side now is pronounced as he. He.
I'm sorry to interrupt. Just wanted to let you know that we've got about 20 minutes left. So just so you can pace yourself.
Okay, that's fine. He, this is the he Ge'ez first order. He ዝንበብ ንኣብነት በርሀ ፈረሀ አብርሃ አብርሀት. And then the second one is the fourth order ha ሓራብእ ንኣብነት ሃብቲ ሃገር ሃንደበት ሃዋርያ. The third one is he, it's glottal. እዚ ድማ ዝንበብ ንኣብነት ሐ ዝንበብ ንኣብነት በፅሐ ወገሐ ነብሐ ፈለሐ. The first one is ha, which is another order on the fourth order. ንኣብነት መሓሪ መልሓስ ሓደ ሓድነት. That's how you write it. And then you have መፅአ መፅአት ምርአያ. And araya ariam awaj awantawi. That's how you write it. Then we have which is glottal. ንኣብነት በልዐ በልዐት ዘዕግብ. Then you have Arab, and then I have Alam, Ma'alti, Ma'ar. That's how we write it. Okay? Okay. And then we have germination. Germination actually is the doubling of words. Some of you are familiar with Gemini or whatever, twinning, so doubling of words. That's another power of Tigrigna, actually. For instance, it says, Musah qarabe, qarabe. Lunch is ready. But we also say, Ma'alti qarabe. The same words have now gone two different meanings, actually, really. You have to understand this contextually, okay? And then we have the syllab. The Tigrigna consonant vowel arrangement is mostly and effectively demonstrated in possessive pronouns, in which the latter, unlike in English, is entirely embedded within the word. For instance, the English phrase, my head, is written in Tigrigna as r'say. The word my, nate, is embedded in it. Similarly, a Tigrigna speaker says, aynay, my eyes, but the my or nate is embedded and it's not necessary to mention it. Then we go to grammar. Tigrigna is rich in its grammar, or suasu. With the exception of inanimate objects like stone and or soil, all nouns in Tigrigna have a fixed gender. For example, sabayti is for woman, sab'ai is for man. Tigrigna adjectives similar to Tigray and Ge'ez adjectives have feminine and masculine genders and singular and plural properties. For example, ጽቡቅ for a woman to mean good or handsome, and ጽብቕቲ for a woman to mean good or pretty. If it is possessive adjective, however, as I have already discussed under syllab, the pronouns are embedded. For example, a man could say makinai, or my car, and you can say makinachi for a woman to mean your car. Then we have innovations. All languages do innovate, especially with respect to technical terms or newly introduced technology. Some of the latter words, in fact, are universal in their applicability. Example, hospital, taxi, police, university. These are universal, really. Wherever you go, people say the same thing. But in regards to second noun pronouns and the use of definite article, Tigrigna employs special words in order to address people and get a person's attention. For example, ati you for a woman, and ata, you for a man in Tigrigna. The you is gender qualified, and the Tigrigna speaker understands when a person addresses a man and a woman, unlike the English you, which could be understood only contextually. Now I come to writing system or written culture. As already mentioned above, the Tigrinya alphabets are also known as Fidal, or borrowed Giz alphabets. Each of the alphabets has 7 characters. The number 7 is not mere coincidence. It denotes completion. And it also corresponds with the 7 days of the week in the Ethiopian calendar. Interestingly, however, each of them sound differently. For the sake of clarification, I will put the pronunciation code against the alphabets, vertically for the characters and horizontally for the 7 orders. Here we are. These are the Tigrinya alphabets. Incredible alphabets, nowhere to be found. And I am proud to say that we are the only ones now in the African continent with a written culture. Early on, we had in Egypt and other places, but they've lost them. The only surviving alphabet in the African continent is now this Ge'ez alphabets, which are Tigrinya alphabets. So you have on the left-hand side, I've given them how you can pronounce the various alphabets. But they have, as you can see, for instance, the first one here I mentioned early on, and then you stroke, it makes it who, he, ha, he, hu, ho, 7 times. You go the same thing for all of them, okay? Scroll down a little bit now. Okay, go ahead. Yeah. We cannot do this for interest of time. Okay, stop right there. Okay. Tigrinya is a very rich language in terms of expressing and articulating concepts, names, relationships, events, anecdotes, narratives, diction, choice of words, elocution, the skill of expression, of speech, prosody, patterns of rhythm and poetry and versification, songs, folkloric traditional values reflected in riddles and proverbs, metaphors, kene, double meaning of words, one figurative and the other metaphoric or hidden meaning. This is incredible. This is Tigrinya. Those of you Tagaru who are going to travel next time, you will be surprised. A 10-year-old boy actually reading poetry in front of a public audience. But unfortunately, as I have critically examined in my other works, Tigrinya literature was unable to flourish in its own birthplace in Tigray. Historically, it lost the opportunity to Amharic engendered by politics of nationality oppression in Ethiopia, but also by the inability of Tigrayan intellectuals to provide the necessary tools in order for Tigrinya literature to thrive and prosper. This includes me. Despite the sluggish literary progress of Tigrinya, however, the inherent richness of spoken Tigrinya is still well preserved. One of my favorite Tigrinya explanatory notes of relationship that neither English nor Amharic offer words for them is the uncle-aunt nexus or connection. In English, if a person says my uncle or my aunt, the audience might ask whose side. Same thing is true in Amharic. One may say agote, my uncle, or akustia, my aunt, and same question will be posed, on whose side. But this is not a problem at all in Tigrinya. When a Tigrinya speaker says akoi, it means my uncle on the mother's side, or the person who is the brother of one's mother. The sister of one's mother, or the aunt, on the other hand, is hatene. The brother of one's father is haobo, and the sister of one's father is amo. Completely classified. Tigrinya is really rich in terms of explaining relationships. In regards to reforming the Ge'ez alphabet, some authors and software designers have argued that it is necessary to have 3, it's not necessary to have 3 has 3 s, says, 2 says, and to us is blah, blah, blah. But they are completely wrong because in Tigrigna, all of them are pronounced differently, really. For instance, the two has in Tigrigna literature, we begin it to different pronunciation, meaning and purpose. Berhe, for instance, could mean the light is on, or it's dawn, or it is the name of a person. Marhe, on the other hand, could mean he gave guidance or he led the way. And then we have the third one, which is her also, known as haleta. This is mostly used for sacred honorific titles and names such as Haile Mariam or Haile Selassie. And though the latter two names are proper and popular names of Ethiopians, literally they mean the power of Mary and the power of Trinity, respectively. Because Amharic does not make distinction of purpose and pronunciation of the above-mentioned characters, any name or word can be written by using any of these letters without due consideration to meaning and purpose. Okay? The two ses could sound the same, but they have different purpose. The se with two legs is used for virtually all words, but the other se is attributed to power, relations, and authority. For instance, Nugus, king, Nugusanegas, king of kings, Sarawit, army, military. By the same token, the two ses, one se, and the other se, there are two of them. One is attributed to the sun, the other to prayer, respectively. They are known as Tsatsahai and Tsatsalot. And if you see them, Tsa looks like Tsahai, as a matter of fact. The other one with two legs is a man standing. So it looks like prayer as well. So we can go on and on and on. One other thing I want to mention here is Kha. There is a Kha thing, Kha, which is pharyngeal and glottal. Difficult to pronounce, but in Amharic, they got it wrong. They call it Ha. No, this is not Ha at all. It's Kha. For instance, if you want to write Khawhi, rock, or Khabdi, gut, or Kokhab, star, in Tigrigna, that's how you write it. Okay. The two S have completely different sounds and convey different meanings in Tigrigna as well. For example, if we say Alam, it is the name of a person. But if we say Alam, you see Alam Arabic, it means the world. Okay, scroll down. Okay. Then one interesting example I give here, look at this now. The Ha Rabi and Ha Rabi, both of them are Rabi, the fourth order. But if you write with Ha Rabi Hapti, it means waltz. But if you write Hapti, it means sister, completely different meaning. Okay, so they are not the same. They pronounce it differently. They have different meanings as well. But anyway, I'm in favor of this blah, blah. And then I'm saying here, reforms were tried to several times to reform the Ge'ez alphabets or the Tigrigna alphabets. I have mentioned one King Zegdur, who reigned in 1347 BCE, and he's the number 31 in the chronology of the Ethiopian dynasty. But Zegdur's input is not exactly known. I've researched a lot, I could not find it. The second attempt at reforming Ge'ez alphabets was during the reign of Ezana, when Ge'ez as a spoken language and as a written system was actually made a transition from consonant to vowel. Okay? That was a great one. That was actually not a reform, it was a revolution, really. So if we revisit now, before the nouns, here actually I have an interesting example. I'm going to go. Before the vowels were embedded in those characters, they used to write with the first order only. So I'm going to give you an example now. For instance, names like Brahane, Dade, Futsum, Hagos, Mulugeta, Senai, Tsaga, Zerai, Galaudios. These are now written with vowels embedded in them. That's why you can say Berhane. That's why you can say easily Zar'ai. But if they were written in the first order, long before the vowels were introduced, they are going to be, Berhane is going to be Berehane, because it's going to be the first orders. All of them are going to be first orders only, Berehane. And Dade is going to be Dede. Futsum is going to be Futsame. Hagos is going to be Hegese. Mulugeta, this is quite surprising actually. You're going to laugh. Mulugeta is going to be Melegete. Sanna is going to be Sanne. Tsagga is going to be Tsagge. Zara is going to be Zara. And Galaudius, look at this. How my name is going to be mutilated now. Gele Wede Wese. That's what it's going to be without vowels. On top of the phoneme purpose and function of Tigrigna's alphabets, their artistic and symbolic elegance must be appreciated as well. Here I'm giving credit to one young man who lives in Canada by the name T.M. Kahsai, who authored a book, Proposed Language Reform for Ethiopia, a book that I have edited and reviewed in 2016. He made a great contribution, but I did not endorse his reform because he was in favor of eliminating some of the alphabets. So
we're at the 5.
what I want to do, I'm at the end now, I'm finished, almost done. Go scroll down. Now I want to show you how these characters were assembled. Their artistic prowess or power. Go down a little bit, horizontal bars, they have some of them. Go down. Hello? You go down. Okay, here we are.
There we go.
Here we are. In here, what you see now is some of them are the legged ones are on top. They have legs. Some of them have 2 legs, the second order. And then some of them have 3 legs. You can go on and on and on. That's how it was. They're very artistically designed. I'm just picking now one only to show you. J. This is pronounced as J. Okay? It has an upper horizontal bar right there, a head serif on this side, a head and an eye, a foot serif, lower horizontal one, a stem, and then a spike, a neck. Okay? So these are not just alphabets. They are designed purposely to actually symbolize something. Okay? We have to study a lot about these things. And finally, I want to say something at the very end. I hope I am having a couple of minutes. Okay? Here we are. Concluding remarks. In this presentation, an attempt was made to critically examine the nature and characteristics of the spoken and written Tigrigna. But it is important to acknowledge the deficits that Tigrigna has encountered vis-a-vis the political realm, and also in the context of lack thereof of literary and literally transformative initiatives in Tigray. I found it quite paradoxical that we still have 60 to 80% of our population in Tigray and the rest of Ethiopia illiterate, when in fact a magnificent civilization of late antiquity gave us the most unique and magnificent alphabets. What I'm saying here is, how can people be illiterate when they have alphabets, when they have written culture? As far as I'm concerned, although poverty is one of our detractors rather, I strongly believe that illiteracy and ignorance are our twin enemies. And those of us who enjoyed the opportunity of being educated should be at the forefront and serve as public scholars, first in the revival and renaissance of Tigrigna language and literature. Second, by exhibiting commitment and willingness to act like soldiers of knowledge and educate our people. Thirdly, by establishing institutions that can foster and promote not only the advancement of Tigrigna language and literature, but also of other related languages such as Ge'ez, Tigray, Amharic, and other Semitic languages. that will be the day. Thank you so much for listening.
All right.
That was great. Thank you, Dr. Glaudios. That was absolutely wonderful. It was an excellent introduction, in-depth scholarly introduction to our language. And I hope it's inspired everyone on the call to take up the baton and contribute towards the development of this language in the field of medicine, in law, everywhere. And we in the diaspora can help do that. It might inspire people to write children's books in Tigrinya and English. We hope that this sparks that interest. There are a number of questions that were asked that we'd like to ask you, Dr. Glaudios.
Taga, this is Zarai speaking.
Uh-huh.
So, Dr. Glaudios, in the interest of the youth here, if you could exemplify what a non-vocalized giz means by giving examples of English words without vowels, please, so they understand what you were trying to say with galada or something like that. So give them examples of English words without the vowels, so they appreciate what you meant, please.
What was that? I didn't quite get that one.
So you were trying to give examples of non-vocalized giz words where there were no vowels, like zar, yeah, ga, san,
Yeah.
If you can give them English words like, I don't know, travel, something like that, to show them how without vowels, English would have sounded the same thing. Without the vowels.
Thing is, the difference is this though. For instance, if you want to write he in English, you don't just write H, you have to put E.
That's what I'm saying. So if you could give them example, what would have happened to English without the vowels?
Okay, that's the problem. Very good question, as a matter of fact. You see, without the vowels, the English, I don't know, but the English would have been actually very difficult to pronounce because the English word needs something to make it vibrate or make it sound. While the giz, for instance, if you say ha, you don't need a. It's ha, it's embedded in it. It's in it, okay? It's in it. Even the first order of the one I gave you, actually, even them, the consonants themselves, they do sound. They make sounds, actually. The English one, if it's, for instance, if you want to say we, you have to have W and E. W and E. Without E, you cannot pronounce it. It could be W, but you cannot say we, though. But in Tigrigna, you can say we. The third order, we, and then you have a leg and you struck it, you have we. Okay? So the way it's written actually is in those giz alphabets, the sounding or the phonology or the vowels are embedded in them. In English, you have to add the vowels. They're not embedded in them.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Zarai. I think we're going to move on to the other questions because there are a lot of them. So yes. The first question actually is coming from our dear Sannai. So is Tigrigna one of the oldest languages? Is it one of the original languages in Tigray and modern day Ethiopia?
One of the oldest. One of the oldest. But however, are you asking me that, Dr. Zaga? Or somebody is asking me?
Somebody else asked you. Sannai was asking.
Okay. Like I told you, the beginnings, evolution, inception, and birth of that language in Aksum, in Tigray, was between the 4th and 5th centuries. This is a general consensus among historians and linguists. But I am saying it is actually, we have to go farther back, couple of centuries, because I've mentioned, if you remember in my presentation, 100 years before Ezana, there were 2 monarchs by the name Asfaha and Tsagab. those names could not come at all unless there were Tigrinya-speaking people. Okay, so it started around the middle of the 4th century, the most of the 4th century AD. And so if you can stretch it to 1,700, 1,800 years, but as a spoken language, not as a written language. The written Tigrigna is going to start in the 13th century. It's going to borrow Ge'ez and start writing, okay? So it's not one of the oldest. Ge'ez is by far older, by far older. By the way, incidentally, in relation to that question, there is a language called Tigray in Eritrea, mostly in northeastern, southeastern Eritrea, spoken. It's much closer to Ge'ez than Tigrigna. It's incredible. For my own research, I put this comparative analysis in my book, Tigray, Tigrigna, Amharic, and Ge'ez, 4 of them. Very, very close to Ge'ez, the Tigray language. And it's older than Tigrigna, by the way. So, well, Tigrigna is one of the oldest, but not, there are other old languages as well. Okay.
Okay, so just to jump on that, right where you started there, Gurmai Gabrahiwat asked, which originated first when you're considering Tigray, Tigrigna, and Amharic? What was the order? Is that, I believe that's...
The order is Tigray, Tigrigna, and Amharic.
Okay. Okay.
But there's something that you have to know. All the Amharic, you see, when we say language, vernacular language means language spoken by the people, okay? But sometimes some elite people can speak a certain language, not vernacular. So Amharic was spoken actually in Aksum too. People don't know that. The elite, the military and the governing elite used to use Amharic, but when it went to south or to central Ethiopia, it became a vernacular people's language, okay? So it actually evolved out of Ge'ez, but after Tigrigna. The chronology is Tigray, Tigrigna, Ge'ez, Tigray, Tigrigna, Amharic.
Okay. The next question for you is, what is the difference, also from Gurmai, between Semitic and cruciatic languages?
Okay, very good.
So we
very good.
Just for the audience, we talked about Afro-Asiatic.
Yes. That's a good question.
Within that.
By the way, I mean, I'm not that comfortable with the Semitic and cruciatic thing, but that's okay. Because in that map I showed you in my presentation, you don't see Semitic and cruciatic as a matter of fact. You see Afro-Asiatic as a whole. In the Afro-Asiatic are included Semitic language, cruciatic language, Hamitic language, Nilotic language. Let me give you examples. For instance, Oromo in Ethiopia is cruciatic. Afar is cruciatic. Somali is cruciatic. But there are people also on the Gambela side and then the Nile side. They are classified as Nilotic. Nilotic means of the Nile, okay? But Semitic language are, Ge'ez is Semitic, Tigrigna is Semitic, Amharic is Semitic, but to some extent it became also cruciatic when it was a started relationship with Oromo and other languages in Ethiopia. So this is the difference between cruciatic and Semitic.
Okay. Yeah. So, and grammatically speaking, you know, the language structure, there are differences there too. I would just add. Okay. So from Fra S, how different were the Sabawian alphabets from Ge'ez? I believe she's referring to the Southern Arabic. Is that right? From Ge'ez, and can you?
Yeah. Sabian.
Yep.
Sabian. She's Sabian. I wish I could have that thing to show you. The Sabians, if you remember in my last time presentation, I and Professor Zorai presented, I was talking about the Sabian and the Ge'ez thing. The Sabians actually, the Sabian thing is 800 to 500 BCE. Some of them resemble Ge'ez. For instance, Actually, the same thing. Actually, and there is also some that resembles ha. There is also an inverted number 3 in the Sabian, which I don't know what that means, by the way. So some of them are resemble, but Ge'ez is distinct. It's very unique, actually. Although they have some resemblance, Ge'ez is completely distinct. Okay, so they can look like the same, but some of them are completely different. That of Sabian is completely different.
Okay. So is that your response? There's another question from Gurmai. Why do we have different accents in Eritrea and Tigray among Tigrigna speaking people?
That's a good question. That's what I said earlier. You remember? We traveled. Some of you, I hope you're traveling with me. I started from Hamasin and I ended up in Wajrat, southern Tigray. This is universal. It's not just Eritrea and Tigray. It's universal. Wherever you go, if you go, for instance, from Canada to New England, it's more or less the same, the English. If you go further down to North Carolina, South Carolina, the accent is going to change. You end up in Texas, it's going to change as well, but it's English. Okay? So these are what we call isoglosses, actually, isoglosses. Wherever you go, everywhere you go in the whole world, you go to China, they have Mandarin, they have another Chinese as well. Okay? Wherever you go. This is, it has to do with geography and movement of people, so. So it's not surprising because within Eritrea itself, there's a difference between what we call Hamasyan and Akalogzai. When you come close to Tigray, those people on the Eritrean side in Akalogzai actually do have the same accent on the border. Okay, so this is not surprising. It happens everywhere, actually, really.
Yeah. So basically, there's diversity in dialects within the Eritrean Tigrigna speaking people and within people in Tigray.
Yes.
Sound exactly the same. And the form that you hear maybe coming out of the capital cities doesn't represent the entire population. Okay, so did Tigray's name come from Tigrigna, or did the words Tigray and Tigrigna, the words Tigray and Tigrigna come about? What?
This is the thing that we could not resolve last time, you remember? The origin of the name, etymology of Tigray. So Tigrigna actually could come from Tigray. Which one comes first? It's like the chicken and egg thing. Okay, they might have come at the same time, as far as I'm concerned. Any thought? I don't know, because which one comes first is difficult to know. Okay.
In Eritrea and in
What was that, Dr. Saga?
How many people speak Tigrigna in Eritrea and Tigray? What's the population?
What's the what? Population?
Saga, I think you're cutting out a little bit, Saga.
Oh.
Yeah, I cannot hear.
It's okay, but the question was, how many people speak Tigrigna language in Eritrea and Tigray?
Oh, okay. That's a good one. Well, now the total population is close to slightly over 10 million in both. Okay. For a long time, people were saying 5 million in Tigray. It's now 7+ million. Eritrea used to be like the total population in Eritrea is 4 to 5 million, but not all of them speak Tigrigna. So a couple of millions, you add that couple of millions or 3 million, it comes to close to 10 million. But I don't have the exact number, exact figure. I'm saying this from an old census I had. Okay.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can
Yes.
hear you well now. Yeah.
So do you know when we talked about when Tigrigna was formed? Do we know approximately when Tigray came about and when Amharic came about?
But I said this already.
When Amharic,
Yeah, Mari came after Tigrinya.
like an approximate date, I think.
I see. The thing is, if people travel from the original home, they most likely are going to evolve their own distinct language. That's what happened actually. We're talking about the Amharic speaking people, but most of the people, like Ago, for instance, are close to Tigray, but they are in north central Ethiopia. Amharic also go further to central Ethiopia, but it came after Tigrinya, I said earlier. Okay, so you're not going to know the exact date. It's very difficult to know.
Okay,
Yeah,
that's
that's good.
fine. Okay. Were Tigray, Tigrigna, and Amharic all created out of Giz? I think that was already answered. But
Yeah.
it also, were they all products of mixing Giz and the Savian languages, or did they come out of Giz independently, I guess?
No, these three languages, Tigrinya, Tigray, and Amharic, evolved out of Giz. Actually, by the way, people have to know, although there was some influence of Sabian early on, the Sabians themselves were absorbed by the Agazian people. They, in fact, started speaking Giz themselves. Okay? Although they came from Arabia, they actually become part of the indigenous people in Tigray. They were acculturated. They were taken over, actually, really. So Sabian did not continue after 500 BCE.
Okay.
It stopped right there. So the first generation were speaking Sabian. The second generation was speaking Sabian as well. But the third, fourth generation forgot Sabian completely. They were speaking Giz. So there's no way the three languages could evolve out of Sabian. They actually evolved out of Giz.
Okay. So the Sabians were absorbed into the Agazian, the Giz people, and continued from there. You got Tigray, Tigrinya, and Amharic. That's good.
No. You have to be careful. I'm not saying chronologically the Sabian comes from before Giz. No.
Oh, okay.
The Giz language was there actually when the Sabians came. We have to be careful in here. Okay? If you remember, I was talking about one guy by the name Rama, an Indian guy who came and conquered northern Ethiopia, Tigray, and Eritrea. The Agazian people actually fought against that person, the Giz-speaking people. The Sabians didn't come then. They came much later, okay? So Giz was there before Sabian.
Very good. That's a very important distinction to make.
Yeah.
So a question from Fure is those double letters, particularly Z and Z, the two different ones, are pronounced the same. So what's the difference beyond the usage between the two?
Chef, I have a problem. It's Sanai, can you say it? What Dr. Saga said now?
Oh, can you hear me, Sanai?
Zaga, we can hear you now.
Okay, I can hear you now.
Perfect.
The difference between the ts and the other ts and how you pronounce them besides their usage.
Yeah. What's the
Oh,
difference?
the tuts you're talking about. Okay, the tuts, and pronunciation is the same. But the purpose, you see, it's not just, we're not interested in pronunciation only. When it comes to ha and ha, they are completely different in terms of pronunciation. The tuts, they are pronounced the same. But if you see the one that looks like a circle and a line in between, okay, that's called tsatsahai. Tsatsahai, okay? The other one that looks like with a head and two legs is a lot. You see the purpose? It's the purpose now, like function, okay? That resembles like tsahai as a matter of fact, circle and a line. It looks like tsahai, right? So although the pronouncing the same, they have different purpose. They signify something else or represent something else. Okay, different things. Prayer and Sahai are not the same. Okay, that's what these people, these reformers, so-called reformers in the Ge'ez fonts, the Amharic Ge'ez font, they completely got it wrong. They eliminated so many words. By the way, the tsalot, the two-legged tse, is eliminated in Amharic Ge'ez font. I'm talking about the software now. Okay, they eliminated it. They are wrong. They should have preserved it. Okay.
All right.
Okay.
So another question from Fure, is there any logic as to the sequence of the letters he, le, he, and me, versus I've seen it start with be?
Well, I don't know what it means by logic.
The chronology of the letters. Is there any logic to it? Is there a reason for it, a rationale?
Oh, well, I don't know myself.
Okay.
Because you see, like last time I tried to research how this brilliant invention came about. Who invented it? So I was puzzled myself. After a lot of research, I found out actually it is the making of 62 clerics who worked hard to assemble all these alphabets. Okay. They might arbitrarily say hal, bet, whatever, but some people actually say Abu Gida, Abe Gida. So you can start with A as well. Okay, but the usual thing we have, the one that's popular, accepted among many people is hal, be. You can go like that. Okay, so it could be arbitrary. It can have a purpose. I'm not sure about it. Okay. I don't know why we have A, B, C, D in English. Why can't we start with Q, L, N, M, and what have you? You know? So I don't really know.
And that is the mark of an honest scholar, is saying, we don't know, and hopefully our youngins will continue to discover.
Okay.
Really? There's another question from John Doe. In other words, the extension shapes in the Tigrigna alphabets can be equated to the functions of the vowels. Is that a correct statement?
The function of the vowel?
So the extension shapes in the Tigrigna alphabet can be equated to the function of the vowels. So the
Yes.
shapes are essentially
Yes, absolutely. Actually, I was trying to explain to you guys. If you say the first hair, for instance, hair, it looks like a U, but if you add a stroke on the right-hand side, it's going to be who. Who is making sound. Then after who, you have the same one. You're manipulating the same alphabet. You can have 7 characters, the same alphabet, and then the ha, the third one, is her, like the first one, but it has a leg. Okay, those legs and strokes actually are the sound making phonology, what we call phonology actually. Okay, that's why we call the vowels are embodied in them. The last one, for instance, if you see the last one of the her order, the first one, the last one is ho, with an earring on top on the right hand side. That o thing makes it sound ho. That makes it sound like so the vowel is embedded in there too. So very much the strokes are very important. Okay.
And the second half of the question is that takes us to the fact that while Tigrigna alphabet is comprised, I guess, of 233 plus letters, while the English alphabet only has 26 characters. Is that so? Yeah. So the fact that we have that many letters is correlated with the fact that the changes in vowel. Yeah, that makes sense. I don't want to answer for you. Go ahead.
The questions are awesome. Okay. Well,
The next question.
Go ahead.
When was Amharic formed, and when did it become a vernacular language? I think we've kind of touched on that already, but go ahead if you'd like.
I did.
Yeah, that one was.
The vernacular thing has to do with.
He
You have to
disregarded
make-
the question already. It was answered.
You did. It sounds
Okay, sometimes
as the vernacular, correct? It was a vernacular language to begin with, spoken by elites, is what you had said in Aksum, and the date is unknown.
Yes.
Is that correct?
for what?
Yeah,
For Amharic?
language, yes, and then it later dispersed to further south to different parts
Absolutely, absolutely. That's
What
what
is-
I said.
of Ethiopia. Yep.
But
okay.
we don't know the exact date though.
Right.
Even for Tigrigna, I remember I stretched between the 4th and 6th centuries, but I've gone back to the middle of the 4th century Common Era. So it's difficult, let alone a language, even an event. To say it started this day is so difficult because it evolves gradually. Everything evolves gradually. That's the way it is. So anyway, we have to make a distinction between spoken language and written language.
Right.
Okay, for a long time, we were speaking. We were not writing, actually, really. Written language came much, much, much later. Sami is raising his hand.
Oh,
Yeah, I did put a message. There's like application or apps to speak Tigrinya. That's like apps. Like, what's the good apps like for on your phone for the youth? I did put in the chat.
yes.
What was it? Can you say that? Can you
Whereas
say-
there's some apps like on your phone to speak Tigrinya.
On the
Apps,
phone? Yeah.
like on your phone, like any applications.
What do you have? The Hahu or which one?
Like for the youth, like if you're young, you get what I
So,
mean.
if you, so Sammy,
By week.
you're saying if you want to learn Tigrinya, there are apps, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Do you mind sharing that with TPN so they can send it to other people, please?
Yes,
Okay.
we can work on that.
Thank you, Sammy.
No.
Appreciate it.
The thing is, no, I want to suggest to you guys if you want to learn Tigrinya on the what do they call them? The software thing, whatever. Relatively speaking, the best is the Hahu software, Hahu, because they have preserved all of them. So you can actually manipulate everything. You can go to Tse and gives you both of them. If you take the Amharic Unicode, they are eliminated. So you're not going to use it for Tigrinya. They are not there. So the Hahu are the best. I use myself for my cell phone, the Hahu 10. So I write Tigrinya very well.
Very good. One more question for you, Dr. Galaudios. How long has the Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo Church integrated or utilized Ge'ez as its liturgical language?
Well, since the church was born. Look, the Ethiopian Orthodox Church is one of the oldest churches in the world, okay? So Ge'ez was there long before the church was born, long before that. But look, after Ezana was baptized or converted to Christianity, he's going to be the first Christian king. Although there were Christian sects before him, the first Christian king. And then we're going to have the first Christian church, which is Mariam Zion, okay? It's beginning that time. We're talking about 1,700 years ago that the Orthodox Church incorporated everything. It even incorporated the calendar, okay? Not only the Ge'ez fonts, it incorporated the calendar as well, okay? So the calendar was invented before the Orthodox Church was born. But after the Orthodox Church came into being, it adopted the calendar, it put all saints in the calendar. So it became like, some people think actually it was invented by the church. It's not. The calendar comes before, and Ge'ez comes before the Orthodox Church. But since 1,700 years ago, the church incorporated both the calendar and the alphabets.
Excellent. Thank you. You've got another question here. How do we teach Tigrigna to kids born here?
Yep. That's the challenge now. The challenge we have. That's what I want to do, actually. I want to teach Sanai first.
He's coming for me. I knew it.
Okay, the best thing to do is, look, by the way, anthropologists like Professor Zora, I appreciate this very well. Language, it's very easy to study language, not in the school, in the street. It's incredible. I myself have learned Arabic in Khartoum, just walking in the streets, asking people and blah, 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 blah. And I had no choice but to talk to those people in Arabic. I did not go to school for Arabic, okay? So it's much easier actually to study, but formally, schools are good. Formally, blah, blah, blah. But Sanai, for instance, can sit with his mother in the kitchen. The first thing he should ask is, ask the utensils. What do you call this? Kara. What do you call this? Jabana. What do you call that? Blah, blah. Okay? Then you become, you learn the language that way. It's so easy. Okay? That's how we should start, actually. This is one of the things I want to adopt, actually, for our diaspora Tagaru people. But formally, we're going to design a curriculum. We're going to have something like, hopefully, after the corona, whatever, we're going to assemble in one auditorium. Then I would be very glad to teach my people how to speak Tigrigna. Okay? But they're entirely different, formal and informal.
Right. Okay, perfect.
Saga, speaking of informal,
yes.
As Dr. Gladios said, the street is where you can learn language easily, but in the American context, it could be the kitchen. When mom cooks, rather than making fun of her English accent, you can try to learn Tigrigna from her, and then you guys can make each other's accent.
Absolutely.
You can make fun of your Tigrigna accent, and you can make fun of English.
Well,
so it would become a fun process whereby the mother teaches or the dad teaches the child, vice versa.
In the kitchen. The kitchen is the best place.
So you've got some requests. I'm just going to put this out here to teach Tigrigna online, which that's something for you to consider.
I got that.
I do have another question for you here. Are the other languages that are spoken in the modern day Amhara state formed from Ge'ez as well? Is this referring to, I don't know if the Qamans, they speak another language, right?
No. Okay. Probably, yeah, okay. Look, the Amhara regional state is not just Amharic. There are other groups actually, like Agaw, like Amant, like Kaila, like Shanasha. There are many of them. They don't belong to the Amharic thing. They have the distinct language. Some of them are cruciatic, as a matter of fact. They're not even Semitic at all. But in due course of time, when you live side by side, your language is dominated by other language, so you're going to borrow their language. So the Qamant speak Amharic as well. The Agaw speak Amharic as well. By the way, when the Kullils were formed, when EPRDF came to power, the Agaws were told to have their own Kullil. But they said, well, we speak Amharic, and then now they are regretting it. Okay? So they are bilingual, actually. Okay? Same thing happens in Tigray. Europe actually speak Tigrigna very well. I've been there myself. I've lived in Europe for several years. They speak Europe, but they speak Saho. Saho is their language. But they also speak Tigrigna very well. And the Kunama in Tigray also speak Tigrigna. although they have their own language. Okay? There are many other linguistic groups in the Amhara regional state.
And them descent is as well was the question.
So, Dr. Tsaga, we're coming up on a 5-minute warning. So I know we got a few more questions, but we got to get ready to wrap up here.
Okay. Is it true Amharic was the official working language in Atse Yohannes's palace? If true, what was the reason?
Well, that's a very good question, by the way. It's a very good question. Emperor Johannes actually decided to make Amharic the official language of Ethiopia. It's actually because Amharic is in the center, is Tigrigna in the north, Oromos and others in the south. And then if you want to communicate with the southern peoples of Ethiopia, it was via Amharic. Amharic was spoken widely in other territories as well. That's why actually it was a technical thing, by the way, the decision made by Emperor Johannes, because he was trying to communicate with the Abba Jufar of Jimma, king of Jimma, who was an Oromo. Okay, so the Atse Johannes created semi-federal states in Ethiopia. So there was a king in Shawa, there was a king in Gojam, and then the Wollo was divided into two parts by his son and by another guy, and then it was Jimma Bajifar too. All of them were more or less autonomous. And then he said the only thing we can communicate with one another is via Amharic. It was technical, okay? So it was actually the decision of Emperor Johannes, not even Menelik, by the way. But later on, it became a dominant language. Other languages were forgotten and then dominated. That's why we had all these nationality problems, actually, really.
Okay, so we're coming up on time. Daniel, what do you ask for books that you might recommend that we can share, maybe a list with our members? Books that you recommend on the subject for people to explore on their own, to learn more. That's wonderful. There is TT's question about a dictionary for us in Tigrigna. I think Dr. Galaudios mentioned that there's one that was just published by the university, Malala University. Is that correct, Dr. Galaudios?
Yes, but I have not seen that dictionary yet. I was told by some people, that's a good start, by the way, a very good initiative. So we need an English Tigrinya dictionary, especially for Tagaru in the diaspora.
There's another question here. Why was the curriculum in Amharic no matter the region?
Why was the what?
Why was the curriculum written in Amharic no matter the region? Why did Amharic dominate, I think is the question here.
Well, yeah, but this has to do with the modern history of Ethiopia, really. Because after Emperor Johannes, for 150 years, Menelik and then Emperor Haile Selassie and the Derg continued. And then, by the way, during Menelik and Emperor Haile Selassie, whether you like it or not, you have to speak Amharic in the schools, in the government, in the marketplace, wherever you go. That's what happened in Tigray, by the way. In Tigray, people speak in Tigrigna, but they used to write in Amharic. If you have a case in the court, you have to have that application, whatever you're going to do, in Amharic, in Tigray. In 1957, Amharic was imposed on the Eritrean people. They were speaking Tigrinya. All of a sudden, they were told to speak Amharic. Okay, so that's why the language became dominant. Actually, it was superimposed from above by the governments for 150 years.
Very good. Thank you so much, Dr. Glaudius. One other point, and then we'll move on to the end. Samrawit mentioned that Gurage and Harari are also Semitic languages spoken within
Yes.
Ethiopia. And she mentioned that they may be connected to Ge'ez. I think this is a question.
Very good. Very good. Excellent question. She is actually right. Gurage and Harari are very Semitic, by the way, very Semitic. The Gurage is not surprising because the Gurage people actually have gone from Tigray, place called Gura. Gura is now in Eritrea, but they've gone from there. A certain Azmach Sabhat actually led the way to, there was famine and drought and what have you, 1,000+ years ago. And then they've gone to central southern Ethiopia. They still speak, their names are unique, very much like Tigrigna, Ghebreyesus, Tesfaye, and blah, blah. Okay? So the Guraginya actually is, for instance, okay, let me give you one example. The Gese. The Gese means made like festival. In Gurage, it's called the Gese. The Gasum. They call it the Gasum, the Gese in Amharic, the Gese in Tigrigna. It came from the word Dagusha, actually, Dagusha, the one we use for making what? Suwa, okay, for festival. So they call, we say the Gese, Amharic say the Gese, and Gurage say the Gasum. Not too far from Tigrigna and Ge'ez, actually. Harar by the same token is very, very Ge'ez, very, very Semitic. For instance, in the Harari language, in the Harari means, of course, the people who live in the walled city in Harar. Okay. So, for instance, they say when they want to say time in Harari, it's waqti. What? We say waqti in Tigrigna too. It's very close. In many, many ways, it's very close. But later on, the Hararis were taken over by Turkish influence, Egyptian influence as well. Then it's going to have a mix-up now, okay? Guraginya, the same thing. If you go to the southern part of the Gurage zone, there are people called Sodo Gurage. Sodo Gurage is more of Oromo influence, okay? And then within the Gurage itself, there are people called Silte. The Silte now say we are different from the Gurage. Although they are Gurage themselves, they became different. They gave them a sub-zone, actually, because they want to be different. But Gurage and Harari are very much Semitic. There is another language called Argoba, which is Semitic as well. But Argoba is almost extinct now.
Yes,
it's going to be extinct.
I think she mentioned Argoba as well. I didn't read that.
Oh, she mentioned, okay. She is very good.
She's very, yep, excellent question. So we're probably going to, okay. There's one more question. We will give this one last question and then we're going to close. Have a national language or add languages to the official languages of Ethiopia with the variety of languages that we have currently? Just asking your opinion.
That's a good question. Actually, a long time ago, when I was at Addis Ababa University, there was a department called Ethiopian Language Studies. It was led by Professor Abraham Domos, the late Abraham Domos. He's dead now, a long time. He came with the idea of having 3 official languages for Ethiopia: Tigrigna, Amharic, and Oromo, because these are widely spoken. In the north is Tigrigna, in the center is Amharic, in the south is Oromo. Now there is a recommendation, which I support, by the way, to have 4 languages, official language for. We should not even say official. Working language is the best. 4 working language for Ethiopia: Tigrigna, Amharic, Oromo, and Somali. because in the eastern side, Somali is widely spoken. You cannot include 80 of them, I'm sorry to say, but these are going to be very effective for Ethiopia and settles many problems, by the way.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you so much, Dr. Glaudios, for sharing your expertise, the decades that you've invested in learning all of this information. We're lucky to have you. Everyone on the call, thank you for joining us. I know Sunny feels the same way, and so does the identity team, TPN, and so does the forum. We very much, again, we're trying to encourage you guys to go out and be the scholars of tomorrow. We want to see children's books. We want to see preschool started. We want to see all sorts of things incorporating our written text. You've learned that it's really ancient. We've got to preserve it. So let's use our resources to get it, infiltrate all the different fields that we're working and learning in. And thank you so much. Sunny, do you have anything you'd like to say?
No, I just want to thank you guys again for taking time out of your day to do this week in, week out. You know, the identity team, Futsum, organizing us, Mulugeta, Gladios, and we didn't have any technical difficulties this time. This was great, guys. Thank you so much. I appreciate your time. Thank you, everybody.
And TPN,
Thank you.
TPN Ashenda.
Thank you all.
Thank you, everyone. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you, guys.
You unmuted yourself.
So we're done, right?
Yeah, what do you?
We are done.
Chanda is writing, and Tagga is writing, and many of them.
Thank you, Doc.
See you later, guys.
Have a good night. I have to go.
Thank you. Guys. Thank you, Tagga.
Dr. Tagga, can you talk about Ashenda more?
Oh, yes. I think Merhawit and Aksum, the main organizers, are on the call, but I can just tell you all, we're having a fundraiser. It's going to be great. Buy your tickets. Come join us. We're going to have a DJ, lots of entertaining activities. Aksum, I see you left the meeting. But she's one of the main organizers. It's going to be great. I hope you guys participate. Dress up in your garb. As you saw, I'm sure, on the Tigray television, they're saying, Corona, we're going to do Ashenda of Gazana. So Ashenda at home, join us, and we're going to have fun, diaspora style. So I hope you all join us. Look in the links, you can see. I think that's Merhawi.
Okay, that's quite a few links, guys. That's awesome. We had people from London. We had people from Australia. That's amazing.
That's so great.
We're very grateful for the Tigray Communities in North America Forum. They have open doors for us.
Hey guys.
Go to PM.
Greetings. Hey guys, my name is Sia. I'm from DC. You know, Tigray of Tigray heritage myself, and I'm really thankful that you guys are putting this together. I was at the last presentation. I came to this one late, but you know, it's really cool to have this, and it's really helpful for a guy like me